other time and place, and part of it is the lyrics, and part of it is, well, that emotion that's created through music, and they latch on to us, and you hear that song and it takes you back to that beach or that vacation or that time and place. And we can't recapture all of what happened in the Old Testament, but we're trying to recapture some of that as we look at the songbook of the people of God, the Psalms. We're trying to recapture, and we're trying to go back and find meaning and, well, hopefully some application for our lives as we move through this. And we've looked at Psalm 23 and Psalm 46, and today we're going to look at Psalm 63. Now, I know when I say the numbers that some of you, these don't mean a whole lot, but that's okay. I hope by the end of this, you will. Now, this one, because I put the sermon series together, particularly jumped out at me. And it's because it definitely transforms me to another time and place, because I can tell you where I heard this song and how much I listened to it. So we're going to go in our time machine back to the late 1980s, okay? You were a young boy in youth group and you wanted to hear Christian music. There were not a lot of selections, okay? You didn't have the iPhone and 1,000 different artists out there. There was a really limited number. And in my youth group, the youth minister gave us some music, and we tried to figure out what we liked. And one group jumped out at me. The name of the group was just called Acapella, okay? Acapella. Now, if you know our church's background, we're kind of in similar with a group that are called the Non-Instrumental Church of Christ. We have some similar beliefs, some similar backgrounds, some connection, but they don't use the instrument. And so this was a group of people out of that sang. There was a guy named Keith Lancaster, and he was kind of the mastermind behind it all. He arranged the music. He put together the group of people, and he was always stellar. It was never the same group of people. It kind of changed from concert to concert and album to album. And they always had, though, this guy with a deep voice. I mean, just really deep, that resonated. And it was always amazing. And in 1987, they came out with a cassette, okay? A cassette, state of the art at the time, called Better Than Life. Better Than Life. And I listened to it, and that song jumped out at me as something I like, and I listened to it over and over again. It was not for a few more years, sad to say, that I was reading through the Psalms, and I stopped at Psalm 63 and go, wait a minute, it's that song. All they did was take Psalm 63 and put it to music. And you can go on your iPhone today, and you can find the song Better Than Life by Acapella, and it's this verse. And in the late 1980s, it was pretty exciting, all right? It was something you could enjoy, and music that was not terrible. And so I connected with this song, and I realized that how much I loved it. I never really knew what the psalm said. I mean, I understood the words, but I didn't understand the meaning or the context. And that's what I'm hoping today we can get by the time we get to the end of this, and it maybe will become a song that's important to you as well. Psalm 63. You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My soul, my whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water. I've seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live, and in your name I will lift up my hands. I will be satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips, my mouth will praise you. On my bed, I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. Because you are my help, I will sing in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me. Those who want to kill me will be destroyed. They go down to the depths of the earth. They will be given over to the sword and become food for jackals. But the king will rejoice in God, and all who swear by God will glory in him, while the mouths of liars will be silenced. So let's get the context. Let's start with that. If you have a Bible like mine, a printed Bible, and some electronics have this, at the top of it, there's a little heading given to it. There are little notes given about that particular psalm. Roughly 2/3 of the psalms have some kind of a note like this, okay? So this says it's of David. It's a psalm of David. So this is, in other words, King David, a shepherd boy who grew up to be king. This is something that he wrote. And then the rest of it says, when he was in the desert of Judah. Now, the word desert could also be translated as wilderness. And you think, what do wilderness and desert have in common? The context of the word really means a place where there are no people. Okay? So it's a place where there are no people. So David has gone to a place where there are no people. What in the world is going on? Well, verses 9 through 11 give us the exact context to help us understand this a little bit more. I'm going to have him bring back up 9 through 11. Those who want to kill me will be destroyed. So in other words, David is in the wilderness because there are people who want to kill him. Okay? When is that? Well, if your name is David, that was twice he had people who wanted to kill him. The first time, he had been anointed as the next king, but Saul was still king. And so he goes into the service of Saul, and he will play music to sort of soothe him and calm his nerves. And it's going great, okay, up until he goes out and he kills Goliath. And after he kills Goliath, and the people are singing praises that Saul's only killed 1,000, but David's killed his tens of thousands, and Saul gets jealous. So in 1 Samuel 17, he kills Goliath. In 1 Samuel 18, Saul is ready to kill David. He tries to pin him to the wall. And pretty much if you read through the Old Testament, 1 Samuel 18 through 31, the last of that book, is all Saul in pursuit of David. Is that one of the times? Well, there's a little statement in this that's important for us to note. In verse 11, it says, but the king. Well, in the 1 Samuel passages, when Saul's pursuing him, he is not king yet. So this has to be the second time. Believe it or not, David gets pursued for his life at least one more time. This time, he has a son named Absalom. His third son, named Absalom, he's strong, he's handsome, he's got long flowing hair, and he doesn't really like his father David. In fact, he's decided he's going to plot against him. And for a period of 4 years, he's going to sit by the gate, and he's going to, it describes it as he's going to win the hearts of the people. Absalom does. Finally, he travels down to Hebron. He gets at Hebron, and they say, you should be king. Absalom is king. And David catches wind of this, and he is going to flee into the wilderness. In 2 Samuel chapter 15, verse 23 says he goes out into the wilderness to be away from people. So we have this story in which Psalm 63 is written while he is fleeing from Absalom, his own son, out in the wilderness as he wants to kill him. Now, as I think through this, I always go, what's the application for us? Okay? I couldn't come up with anything immediately, all right? I don't know that most of you, your son has not been out to kill you because they want to be king, all right? So where does this connect with us? Here's the idea, though. David had to leave everything, okay? Scared for his life, he packs up and he goes out into the wilderness, and what he's feeling, the primary emotion is he's alone. He's alone. He is away from his palace, he's away from his family, he's away from his mighty men that supported him, and he is alone. And it's not because of his own choice. He's alone because his family has turned against him. He's alone because other people have turned against him and turned their back on him. And I recognize that in this room there are a group of people who struggle with being alone. Now, I tried to find stats and statistics. I got a couple of things. AARP did a study. Of those 55 and older, 1/3 said, we feel alone. That our family's grown up and they're doing their own thing, and we're left by ourselves. 1/3 of the elderly, of our senior citizens, feel lonely. Now, it's hard to nail down any other demographic, because part of it is we all go through loneliness, and we kind of have it at a point in time, and then we don't have it, and then we do have it, and we don't have it, and we kind of bounce back and forth depending on the situations and the things that are going on in our life. So it's really hard to nail down. But I think if I ask most of you, if you're not there now, there's been a period in your life where you'd say, I just really felt lonely. I felt like I needed something. That's where David finds himself. Psalm 63 verses 1 through 8 give us the content once we have the context. Okay, and I'm going to split it in two parts. Some people split it in three. The most split it in two. That's where I'm going to stay with. I'm going to look at, first off, the longing for God. The longing for God. I'm not going to read it again, but verses 1 through 4 demonstrate his longing for God. He starts off, you, God, are my God. These are the words of a believer. Okay, when we think about somebody being lonely and you hear those statistics, you go, well, that's not somebody in the church. That's not somebody who follows God. That's not a follower of Jesus. And he recognized that even we have those seasons. There's nothing wrong with you if you call yourself a Christian, if you call yourself a believer, and you go through a season where I just feel separate from everybody. And yet in that separateness, he recognizes that God, my God, is still present in this moment. It says in the NIV, earnestly I seek you. If you have a different translation, it says, early I seek you. It's because the root word for both of those are the same. It could mean early, and so some people do is say it's early because it lines up with later on he's going to talk about the watches of the night. So he's talking about morning and night, and we give both context that. It could just mean earnestly, as one commentator said, if you get up early to do something, you're pretty earnest about it. Okay? If you're the kind of person that rises early, you have your mind and your heart set. So earnestly, I am seeking, I am longing, I am after you. And then he gives a series of analogies. Now, I'm going to share a lot of stories today to try to hopefully bring this home to you, maybe more stories than I normally do, but I kind of want to walk through this a little bit line by line. The first part of this, in this analogy, is it's like dry land that needs water. It's like dry land that needs water. In a dry and weary land, there's no water. Now, we've been going through a little bit of a drought here in the Midwest, in Missouri. We haven't gotten all the rain that some of the other places in Missouri have. I know this because I walk with my wife, and yesterday we were out on the back roads, and as we came around this one back road, there were at least 2 inches of dust, all right? What we call gravel roads, they're not. Most of them aren't really gravel, right? They're just dust, all right? And it's like land like that, land that needs water. He says, that's how I'm longing for God. Secondly, he says, I'm like a worshiper who wants to go to worship. I want like a worshiper. I've seen you in the sanctuary. I've beheld your power and glory. Now, he's talking about the temple, or really prelude to that. At this point, it's still just a tabernacle. He's talking about the place of worship. And now, David's had a unique perspective because he has actually helped move the Ark of the Covenant. He's seen the presence of God. He's seen the power of God displayed. And he says, I long for that. I found it curious. One of the, if you know me, I go online, I read all these different sermons as I'm preparing mine, what other people are saying. And one of the contexts that I found this one used the most, that most people preached on this, was during the COVID shutdown. It was during the COVID shutdown. They had a sermon, or they've gone online, or they had put something out there of this nature that we longed to be in worship. And I don't know if you remember those days. You remember those 12 weeks at least here where we didn't meet, and you kind of go, oh, Sunday morning, I don't know what to do with myself. I want to be there. I want to be with them. And that's what David is saying. Into the next verse, he goes on and says it's like someone in love, because your love is better than life. My lips will glorify you. Now that's kind of an overstatement. It's your love being better than life, but what he's trying to do is capture the emotions of love. I mean, this is an honest question. How many of you have been in love? All right, you had that moment where it was just everything. I'm a product of the late 80s, early 90s, okay, especially the music. We're already talking about listening to music now. I can listen and tell you the lyrics to probably every song from the late 80s and early 90s. But as I read that line, what came to my mind, Alan Jackson, right? Two young couple, say the vows, spread their wings, and live on love. Right? That was the sentiment of the early 90s. We're living on love. Yeah, for a while that works. Stay with that. Well, that's kind of its picture here. It's like I'm like a lover who is longing for someone. I'm missing them. And last, it is like someone who wants to offer praise. It's an interesting thing. We are created as people who like to praise things. We find something to give voice to this. Now, we think of praise generally in terms of church. And we're here and we sang some praise songs, but praise means far more than that. It's just promoting and talking good about something, okay? I find that online, people do a lot of praising. Go to Amazon and you go under a product, you're going to see, they call them reviews, but there's people who are praising products. Now, I'm not a person who gives reviews, but I understand it. This last year, I got a digital meat thermometer, and doesn't sound like much, but it was exciting to me, and I made the best deer backstrap I've ever cooked. I mean, it was perfect. And I did it again, and it was perfect. So much my son was asking for it. So what I did was this year, I bought them meat thermometers for each one of them. You should get this. You should tell your friends about it. I praised that thermometer. That's the same kind of thing. He says, I'm praising God. I'm speaking of its goodness and what it's meant to my life. The first half of this psalm is all about him longing for God. When David found himself alone, catch this, he was brought back to the essentials of what was important to his life. Nowhere in the first 4 verses, remember again, the context, he's fled out into the wilderness. Nowhere in the first 4 verses does he say, I miss my palace. I miss my big comfy bed. I miss the gold, my bank account. There's none of that. See, when things get removed from you, often it reveals what is really, truly important. When you go through that difficult season in life where you feel like everyone's turned their back, it's in that moment you can learn what really, really matters to you. I was in an elders meeting, not here at this church. I was in an elders meeting, and we were having a conversation about what we should do about a local family. There was a local family, and their house had burned down. Everything in it was completely destroyed, and all the churches were rallying together to try to do something nice for them. And we were talking through this process when Bob made a comment I will never forget. Bob was, he was about 68 at the time, and he said, you know what? He says, we got to make sure we do this right. And then he added this. He says, because I've lost everything in a fire. So I've lost it all. It was heart-wrenching. But it really taught me what's important. Yeah, that's it. There are seasons that we go through that remind us of all the other junk in our life is just junk. And he has brought himself back to longing and searching for God. So then the second side of this is that he finds satisfaction in God. He finds satisfaction in God. And that's verses 5 through 8, in verses 5 through 8. Again, I'm just going to walk through these. He says, I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. All right, let's talk about that for a second. Satisfaction from food. You might have noticed, I don't know, over the last couple years, I lost close to 85 pounds. Went through this process, and then I just started living normal life, and with holidays and everything, I got on the scale here not too long ago, and I put back on about 25 of that. And so it was time to go back into my diet and exercise phase, which, if you know my wife, that consists of a lot of walking. Okay, we are walking everywhere all the time. All right, a lot of walking, but then I'm counting my calories each day as we go along. But part of my diet and exercise plan is that on Sunday, I eat whatever I want. And the goal is that it boosts my metabolism, curbs my cravings. And so on Sundays, I do. Let me tell you what I had last Sunday. Last Sunday, I started off my day with a cinnamon roll, big Hy-Vee cinnamon roll covered in icing. That's how we started my day. For lunch, I had steak and I had shrimp, and I had as much of it as I could eat. For supper, this is not an exaggeration. For supper, we got this, I don't know who makes it. It's vanilla with fudge stripes through it, okay, chocolate stuff. So I got a big bowl of ice cream, and then I got Magic Shell. You guys don't know the Magic Shell. They have one now, it's just chocolate fudge. And I went from side to side. So then I sat on my bed, and I fed it on my belly, and I just, I dug in. And I tell you what, the reason I do that though is in part it boosts my metabolism, but the other part of that is when I'm done on Sunday, I am satisfied. I don't I don't even think about chocolate and sweets and stuff till at least Wednesday. All right? Then it starts to come back. Then you start thinking Sunday's right around the corner. But in that setting, he says, I went in thirsty for God, like dry land. I'm going to come out of this fully satisfied, like I had eaten everything that I wanted to eat. Second, in this, he says, I will praise, I will sing praises. With singing lips, my mouth will praise. He actually says this twice. In verse 5, it's future. I will praise you with my mouth. In verse 7, it's in the shadow of your wings. I am singing. It's present tense. There's a difference there. What happened? Well, David, in part, is longing to go back to the community of worship. Okay? We talked about that during the shutdown. There's this longing. I want to be back, and I want to hear everybody singing. I can't wait to join in the song. But then there's this moment that realizes, God, you're my help. I can sing right here. Right? During the shutdown, I wanted to be back here to hear most of you sing. All right? I was looking forward to that. But I realized I can still sing on my own. Now understand, that's not a replacement. That's not David saying, good, I can spend the weekend at the lake. I mean, I can get up and if I just sing a song. Well, I mean, listen to a song. I mean, think about the possibility of listening to a song later. That's good enough. No. This is an addition. In addition to singing and worship, when I'm kept away from it, now I'm going to voice my praise for God because He is still protecting me. He wanted to praise the Lord. He still wants to praise the Lord, but he found that he can do that right in his current location. Third on this, he says, I will remember you. I will remember you. This is the fulfillment, all right? This is the fulfillment of seeking love or like a lover. He says, I will think of you through the watches of the night. It's a description of someone who's satisfied not just in their relationship with someone, but even in the memory of that relationship. That I've spent the day with them, and now at night I can't even sleep because all I want to do is just go back over everything they said and everything they did. And in this context, he's like a lover who's found fulfillment and can't stop thinking about it. When I was in Alaska, there was a couple that I had to do counseling for them, for their marriage, and he was a guy that he owned a business of charter boats and hunting trips. I mean, he was a rugged guy, lived in Alaska most all of his life and really rugged. And we were talking about what was missing from their marriage at this point in time. And she says, when we were married, he would come to me in the next day and every day he had a new poem. And I said, what? And I said, tell me what you're talking about. He said, well, we'd spend the day together. That night he would go home. This big rugged guy, said he would write out a love poem for me. And the next day when we got together, the first thing he did was he would read me this poem. And I looked over at him and I said, really? And he said, what can I say? I was madly in love. That's what love does. I think of you through the night. I find satisfaction not just in your presence, but in the memory of all that you've done for me in every words that we've had together. And finally, I will cling to you, and your right hand upholds me. The word for cling actually is the same word for cleave from Genesis chapter 2. It's a description in the Bible of what you do with your spouse. I cleave to my spouse. I become one. In this, he says, I'm going to cling to God. I'm going to hold on to him like it was a married couple. I'm going to hold on to him like till death do us part. Now, your right hand, the image of right hand is always the image of power in the Bible. Right hand is the hand of power. He says, your right hand is going to uphold me. You're holding on to me while I'm holding on to you. Again, I'm sharing a lot of stories today, but I hope you understand that the connection I'm trying to make. So I'll tell you this one. I was invited to do, Michelle had started back to work, and I was invited to go to the kids' school and be involved in a fair. Michelle wanted to be there, and she couldn't, so I got to go. And I showed up, and they had a bunch of inflatables out, and they were doing all these things with kids. And I said, "What do you want me to do?" And I was the only man there. And they said, "We got an idea for you. Would you work the Velcro wall?" And I said, "Okay, I guess." And so let me tell you what the Velcro wall is. I got to stand there, and these kids would put on this little outfit that would come up, and they would zip it up, and it was all Velcro on one side, and then there was this wall that's all Velcro. And my job was to pick them up and throw them up against the wall. I kid you not. They would come up to me, and I would pick them up, and I would throw them up against this wall. But here's what I found. Throwing them on the Velcro wall is part of the fun, but the work comes getting them off the Velcro wall. Okay, if you know how Velcro works, they're stuck, and you start to pull them off, and if they move a little bit, they stick back on, and you yank them, get each one of them off. And I spent the day throwing a kid and then ripping him back down and then throw him again. When I read this passage this week, for some reason, that was the image that came to my mind. I will cling to you. I will stick like Velcro. And there's nothing going to come and pull me away from that. David, in this season of loneliness and separation, David, King David, believer David, David who slayed Goliath, David felt lonely, but he finds all the fulfillment of what he needed in God. He found all that he needed, the essentials of life. The thing that he needed the most was in his God. Verses 9 through 11 just describe what happens to his enemies, that his enemies are going to be destroyed, so that we have the context of that. But in verse 11, there's one statement that I want to draw your attention to. It says in the middle of it, "All who swear by God will glory in him." All who swear by God will glory in him. Here's my translation. All who long for God will find satisfaction in him. If your desire is God, if you find that that's the essential thing of your life, you find that that's what I really need, he will meet all of your needs. Catch this. God will meet all of the longings that you need, no matter what other people are doing to you. Your close friends may turn away. Your family might turn against you. But God will never leave you nor forsake you. Preacher in the early church, 300s, was named John Chrysostom. I can't say it very well. John Chrysostom. He was a noted preacher. The word Chrysostom means actually golden mouth. He was such an orator. People loved to hear him so much. They would come from everywhere to hear him speak. But he had a simple challenge to the church and to anyone that heard him. He said, you should do is every day get up and read Psalm 63. Every single day of your life, you should get up and read Psalm 63. And here was the conclusion. Because if you start off your days longing for God, then every night you will go to bed satisfied. God, you are my God. Earnestly, I seek you. Let's pray. Father God,